Well, after week 15, it's the playoff race is getting even tighter, and some teams have already clinched, but can the remaining teams get in somehow? Primarily, can the Seahawks get in?
Let's talk football.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the All Around Sports Podcast. Sports are everything on this channel. I'm your host, Antonio. Today, we are going over my Week 16 NFL predictions and power rankings. So, if you're new to my channel, basically what I do is I go over my top 5 best and worst performances of the week, and then I go over my power rankings, list them from 10 to 1, and then I go over my predictions throughout the week in case you all are new. But last week, I was a record of 9-4. Now, with the bye weeks ended, I went 12-4. Only 4 I got wrong were the teams that I had selected these teams: 49ers, Panthers, Lions, and of course, the Seattle Seahawks. But this week is full of a lot of major key matchups, especially in the playoff race. As if the Chiefs win, they will clinch the number 1 seed. But man, last week you had a lot of really good games. You had so many good games. You had the Bills upsetting the Detroit Lions. You had the worst Thursday night football game imaginable with only field goals scored between the Rams and the 49ers. Well, we're going to get into all that here in just a little bit. But before we get started, if you all do enjoy this video, please be sure to do me a favor and smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. For now, let's get this party started. And also, before we get started, as you can clearly see, I got a new setup behind me also. So you might see a little Vegas Golden Knight hat, you see a Kraken, you see a Seahawk gnome, and a Seahawk helmet. On this side, you also got some other stuff as well, including my Union Titan stuff. But, anyways, now we get into the top 5 best performances, and then we'll get into the worst. But, starting off at number 5, Packers, even with Perna's cursed wheel, the Packers still were able to beat the Seahawks. Now, for those of you that are not aware, Brandon Perna is one of the YouTubers, host of That's Good Sports. His curse wheel landed on the Packers, which I thought that was going to help us. Apparently, I was wrong. The Packers ended up running all over the Seattle Seahawks. Josh Jacobs, one of the best running backs in the league. He's the third leading rusher in the NFL. So that is really good, and I like what the Packers did, and I'm kind of sold on them being a legit threat. Then, number 4, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield continues to bake as he bakes the Chargers defense. Baker Mayfield was going off, and they now have a shot to win the division. As if they keep on winning, and then the Falcons lose one more, they could possibly win the division. But we'll see what happens for the next few weeks. Number 3, you got the Philadelphia Eagles beating down the black and gold incarnation of winners, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were going off on Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson, this is his first loss ever against the Philadelphia Eagles. Not the same when you're playing with Seattle against Philly. Not the same thing. But that number 2, you got the Denver Broncos continuing to cook as they have beaten the Colts and are now only one win away from making a playoff berth. But man, this is going to be a really good game this upcoming week. But the Broncos are showing some really good stuff. I like what I'm seeing from them. And then number 1, the biggest, hugest statement of the week: the Buffalo Bills dethroning my number 1 team in last week's power rankings, the Detroit Lions. My oh my, was this a good game? This game was full of shots, and it was a ball game, all right. The Bills were able to absolutely cook the Detroit Lions, and that was a huge statement, especially to many people. But now we move to the 5 worst performances of the week. As at number 5, you got the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers, even though they were at home, it did not appear to matter because their defense could not stop Tampa Bay, which Baker Mayfield in the offense is a whole different story, but still, you need to show up. But number 4, back on the worst, you got the Seattle Seahawks lack of consistency. 4 game win streak, huh? Apparently, they can't win against good teams. This is what frustrates me the most as a Seahawks fan. They go on a 4 game win streak. We're looking at them as a really good competitor. But then they go out this week and lose to the Green Bay Packers. They just cannot be consistent. They need to beat a good team. The teams that they've beaten have been the Broncos, Patriots, Dolphins, Falcons, 49ers, Cardinals twice, and the Jets. All of them are really 50-50 teams. And this is the part that frustrates me the most is when they face against good teams, they can't suck in the guts to actually beat those teams. And that is a frustrating thing coming from a Seahawks fan. But, anyways, the Steelers, at number 3, the Steelers defense could not stop the Red Hot Eagles offense. The Steelers defense, where was that on Sunday? Where was the defense? And also, TJ Watt did go down as well, so I can understand that bit. But Steelers, where were you? Because I didn't even see you because you were getting so pummeled by the Philadelphia Eagles. And I've said this, if they can't show up against good teams, they're going to be one and done. And I still stand by that to this day. And then number 2, you got the Miami Dolphins. Can't get a win on the road outside of Miami. The Miami Dolphins have very likely been eliminated from the playoff picture. I do believe this is the end of the season for the Miami Dolphins, and they should just try and tank the rest of the 3 games. Well, we'll see what happens, but Miami is not looking good for you. Then, number 1, you got the San Francisco 49ers that can't even score a single touchdown. You had one job, San Francisco. One job. I had you picked last week for crying out loud. I mean, for real. Brock Purdy. What was he even doing? Was he sleeping? Because apparently he was, because the offense didn't even score a single freaking touchdown. And that is so infuriating because the 49ers, this is the first time they got swept by the Los Angeles Rams. And you didn't even post up a single touchdown. Not a single touchdown. Not one. None. You posted up none. And Kyle Shanahan, he's likely going to get fired. So if he gets fired, just know you heard it here first. But now that that's out of the way, now on to the power rankings. Starting us off in a topic that has been created for the last few weeks is teams that have clinched a playoff berth. The first up in the category is the Houston Texans. The Texans were able to clinch the AFC South last week with a win and then a Colts loss. So good news for the Texans. They ain't gonna choke the bag like the Titans and Jaguars did. So that's a good thing for Houston. Now, then you also got the Minnesota Vikings clinching a playoff berth with Seattle losing. So Packer fans probably don't want to have that because Viking fans are pretty much saying thank you to the Green Bay Packers. So I bet that's a bad taste for Tom Daniel Grozzy. But then the last spot to be clinched was, in fact, the Pittsburgh Steelers with the Colts losing. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are only one more win away from possibly clinching their division as they got a huge game this week. So we'll see what they can do. But now we move to the honorable mentions. I have 5 on the list this week, as here they are in no particular order. The Cincinnati Bengals, Pittsburgh Steelers, Seattle Seahawks, Baltimore Ravens, and the Houston Texans. Now, the Bengals, Steelers, Ravens, and Texans, I need to see one more win from each of them in order to put them back in. As for the Seahawks, I need to see a win from against a good team to consider them back into the top 10, unfortunately. But now we jump in to the top 10. At number 10, you got the Los Angeles Rams. The first time they've made their way onto my list this season, unfortunately. The Rams, even with scoring field goals in a non-touchdown affair against the 49ers that I mentioned earlier, they land on this list because they are the leader of the NFC West now, with the Seahawks losing to the Green Bay Packers this past week. So you're up here for now. We'll see what happens come week 18. Then, number 9, you got the Washington Commanders. The Commanders jumping back up a few spots after a huge win against the New Orleans Saints. They got a big game this week against Philly. We'll see if they can keep their hopes alive of potentially the division, but they could possibly clinch a playoff spot this week. But number 8, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers posted up 40 on the Los Angeles Chargers, which I believe is really impressive, especially the way that the Chargers have been looking this past year. But at number 7, remaining at number 7, you got the Denver Broncos. Broncos getting a big win against Indianapolis, but with the other stuff going on in the top 6, I need to see one of those teams fall off and then the Broncos to win a game in order for that to happen, to project them up higher. Then number 6, you got the Green Bay Packers. I got to give them credit. They did a really good job against the Seattle Seahawks and what they were throwing at them. They were doing a really good job, and I got to give credit to the Packers. And I think that right now they might be a good team to watch out for in the NFC. But then number 5, you got the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings jumping up into and staying at number 5. But the Vikings, I think right now they're one of the best teams in the NFC. Right there with the Philadelphia Eagles and Lions. But number 4, even though they won, dropping down another spot, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the only reason I did this is because of Mahomes' injury. That's the only reason. If Mahomes was healthy and they beat the Browns, if Mahomes had not gotten hurt that game, I would have kept him at number 3. But now with Mahomes getting injured, there is a little room for concern. But number 3, you got the Detroit Lions. After losing a massive upset against the Detroit Lions, against the Buffalo Bills, they jumped down to number 3. But the injuries just keep on piling on as they lost David Montgomery now for the season. So Sonic will have to perform without Knuckles. Of course, switches to Mir Gibbs. But good news for the Lions as Aiden Hutchinson announced that he will return for the Lions if they make it to the Super Bowl, which is highly likely. But number 2, you got the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles jumping up to number 2 because of their win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. And more importantly, Russell Wilson. They were winless against Russell Wilson. Now they beat him. So, and also to Philly, thank you, by the way. But number 1, back on top for the second time this season, the Buffalo Bills. The reason I put them at number 1 is because of their win against the Detroit Lions. Going into Detroit, into a very hard environment to play in, like an area like Detroit. So that is going to be a really good thing to keep an eye on. But I think the team known as the Bills are a really good team, but we'll need to see more if they can win against the Chiefs in January. But now let's get into the predictions. Starting us off on Thursday Night Football, you've got an AFC West showdown between two really good teams in the playoff picture right now. But this game's going to be really good. You got the Denver Broncos going on the road to LA, or is it really on the road, to take on the Chargers. The Broncos getting a massive win last week against the Indianapolis Colts. And with that, they're for the first time in a while, they're only one win away from possibly making a playoff berth. But of course, this will be the first time since the Peyton Manning era that they would make a playoff berth, because they have not made a playoff berth since Peyton Manning retired. But this would be amazing because Bo Nix, I like what I'm seeing from him, and also the offense of Denver. But they're going to be taking on the Chargers that got posted 40 on them against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But every home game, it feels like, for the Chargers has been taken over by away fans. It has been a stadium takeover pretty much every single game, which is pretty much an additional road game for the Los Angeles Chargers. And the Denver fan base is really good. They're very loyal, and I do expect a lot of Denver fans there. So I'm actually going to go with the Denver Broncos. The Chargers beat them last time they faced off, but Bo Nix did not look as good as we're currently seeing him right now. So I'm going to go with the Broncos to get the win over the Los Angeles Chargers. And then you've got a game that was very highly anticipated at the beginning of the season and maybe a really decent matchup, but there's a lot on the line. You got the Houston Texans going on the road to Arrowhead to take on Kansas City Chiefs. May, this is going to be a good one. The Texans clinching their division last week after a win against the Dolphins, and then the Colts also losing, which they're going to avoid the choke that the both Titans and Jaguars did. So that's a bullet dodged by Houston. But they're not going to have an easy test ahead of them as they are going against the Kansas City Chiefs that have a chance to clinch the AFC 1 seed this week.
I can't take it anymore. He's taunting us. Listen. Stop laughing at us, you solar twin.
Which, if they win, they will clinch it immediately because Buffalo, they still need a lot of things to happen in order for the 1 seed to be clinched. They would need the Chiefs to lose out, and then the Bills would need to win out, which is very rare, which is very unlikely. But the Chiefs getting some bad news last week as Patrick Mahomes suffered a high ankle sprain. So he's week to week, but according to reports, he should be ready and healthy. But we all know this. If Mahomes is out, the offense of Kansas City is not going to be able to do anything because they're not the same without Patrick Mahomes. So because I'm going to rely on Mahomes' health, I'm actually going to go with Kansas City. I was thinking about going with Houston, but because of the news I recently heard from Mahomes on Patrick Mahomes on his health, I do believe he will come back healthy, and we've seen him play in a high ankle sprain before. But I'm going to go with Kansas City to get the win, clinching the number 1 seed of the AFC. And let's hope I'm wrong. And then you've got an AFC North showdown, which this could likely be for the division. You got the black and gold incarnation of winners, the Pittsburgh Steelers, going on the road to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. The Steelers last week losing to the Philadelphia Eagles, which they have now the Steelers, they did not look so good, and pretty much Russell Wilson has to have a perfect game in the postseason in order for the Steelers to make a playoff berth. However, there was some bad news for the Steelers as TJ Watt got hurt. I don't know the details, but if he's out this game, you might not want to watch this game if you're a Steelers fan. Because if TJ Watt is out, this defense is not the same. Because we saw this last year when they went against Buffalo in the wild card round. They got absolutely bum rushed by Buffalo with TJ Watt being out. And when he's out, they're a 500 team at best. So I do have some concerns for Pittsburgh. But, anyways, they're going to be taking on the Ravens that were able to score 5 touchdowns on the Giants, as has every team this year, except for the Seahawks. But, anyways, enough about that. I do think this game is going to be really close. I do expect it to be close because it is a divisional rivalry game. I am going to give the edge to the Pittsburgh Steelers because if they win this, they would clinch the AFC North, which is pretty much what they need to do if they want to have a shot at actually winning a playoff game. They have not won a playoff game since in 8 years, since 2016. So we'll see what happens, but I'm going to go with the Steelers to get the win over the Ravens. However, I would not be surprised if I was wrong. And then you've got the New York Football Giants.
All hail the New York Giants.
Going on the road to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. The Giants getting absolutely pounded by the Baltimore Ravens. And for Giants fans, this is probably nothing new because this is how their season has gone majority of the year. And this is pretty much what they expected at the beginning parts of the season. They're going to be taking on the Atlanta Falcons, which they got to win, but not by a bunch, as it was the last second Hail Mary by the Raiders to get them the win. So the Falcons dodged a bullet. So we'll see what happens, but I am going to go with the Falcons. I see this as a very winnable game for the Atlanta Falcons. And if they somehow lose this one, it might cause a little trouble. But I'm going to go with the Falcons to get the win over the New York Football Giants, and the Giants continue their tank. And then you got the Battle of Ohio. You got the Cleveland Browns going on the road to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. The Browns, everything that has gone wrong for this season is going wrong because with Jameson Williams, James Winston not doing what he's supposed to do, DTR did have to get substituted in. So I'm not expecting anything from the Browns at all. They're going to be taking on the Bengals. That last time they faced off, they beat them. The Bengals beat the Browns. So the Bengals, they've for some reason had their struggles against Cleveland throughout the beginning parts of the years. And the Bengals, they're fighting for their very thin playoff lines. And of course, they would have to have a few things happen in order to stay in the playoff race. But I am going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals here. I do think the Bengals are the better team than Cleveland. I just think right now Cleveland is going to continue to tank. Maybe go after a guy like Shador Sanders, maybe a quarterback. I'm not sure. But Cleveland needs to do something because clearly what Kevin Stefanski is doing is clearly not working. So I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals to get the win over the Cleveland Browns. And then you've got an AFC East showdown between the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. The Patriots, they've just continued to lose because it's who they are now without Tom Brady. They lost to the Arizona Cardinals, which I would have liked it if they had beaten the Cardinals. But either way, they're not. The Cardinals are not going to win the division. They would have to have a lot of things happen. They're going to be taking on the Buffalo Bills that pulled the upset of the week and showing the Lions on how scary they really are. But Buffalo, this team, I did not expect what they were doing. I thought the Lions were going to continue to dominate, but the injuries have been something that has held them back. So the Bills, they've been looking pretty good. They would have to have a few things go their way to clinch the AFC 1 seed. I do see them at least getting the 2 seed, at least if they can avoid Kansas City until the AFC Championship game. That would be something for Buffalo fans to enjoy. So I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I do think right now that the Bills are better than the New England Patriots, and they've only lost to them once during Tom Brady's departure. That was, of course, last year in Foxborough. But I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills to get a massive win over the Patriots. And Patriots, just not going to be the same again without Tom Brady. And then you've got a maybe intriguing game. You got the Arizona Cardinals going on the road to Charlotte to take on the Carolina Panthers. The Cardinals beating up on bad teams, but still they can't beat the Seahawks. So their division is pretty much out of reach. Because the Lions, the Rams, and Seahawks are battling it out. But the Cardinals, they're going to be taking on the Carolina Panthers. That with looking good for the past few weeks, they ended up getting blown out by Dallas. So it's nothing new there. But this Carolina Panthers team, something's been going actually really good for them because for the first time they've actually had hope. Because I know this is not a familiar thing for any Carolina Panthers fan, because normally they would expect to nothing in the December, but now you're actually starting to have actually close games. So maybe might be a good sign in the future. I'm just saying. But I am going to go with the Arizona Cardinals. I would like the Panthers to get a win, but I'm going to go with the Cardinals to get the win, keeping their slim playoff hopes alive. And Panthers, I'm sorry, the heartbreak is real. But then you got an NFC North showdown. You've got the Detroit Lions going on the road to Chicago to take on the Bears. The Lions, the injury bug is real because they've lost David Montgomery for the season, and it's just not getting any better for the Detroit. Because right now they are currently neck and neck with the Minnesota Vikings for the division, but the Lions, they need to clinch the 1 seed because their health depends on it. They're going to be taking on the Chicago Bears. That should be an easy win because the Vikings just got done beating them down. And ever since the fire of Matt Eberflus, the Bears have just gotten worse since his firing. So good news for Detroit. So they won't have to deal with Matt Eberflus's defense. But I am going to go with the Lions here because I think that the Lions should easily get this win. But we'll see. In the division rivalry game, you just don't know. But I'm going to go with the Lions to get the win over the Chicago Bears. And sorry, Bears, but the pain is real. And then you got the Tennessee Titans going on the road to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. The Titans, and it's just not getting any better. They lost to the Cincinnati Bengals this past week, but the Titans, they just need to go out there and get somebody else because Will Levis clearly is not that guy. So they're going to be taking on the Indianapolis Colts that had a chance at the division, but now their playoff chances have gotten much more complicated because they would have to have a lot of things go their way in order to sneak into the playoffs. I don't think that's ultimately going to happen. So I'm going to go with the Colts regardless because Colts, they are still fighting for their playoff lives. I do think the Titans are not a good team. So I'm going to go with the Colts to get the win over the Tennessee Titans. And then you got a battle in New Jersey. You got the Los Angeles Rams going on the road to New York to take on the New York fraudulent Jets. The Rams, last week, after beating the Bills by multiple touchdowns, they couldn't score a single touchdown against the 49ers defense that's banged up to heck. And there wasn't even a single touchdown scored in the entirety of the game. So, and the 49ers are banged up as heck. So I'm really concerned for the Rams because they've been so inconsistent. They had a win over the Seahawks, then they went out against Miami and lost. Then at home that following week, after they beat the Patriots, they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. This team just cannot be consistent. Kind of similar to the Seahawks. The Rams need to continue to be more consistent. But they're going to be taking on the Jets. The Jets got a big win last week against the Jaguars, helping the Jaguars in their tank. But this game is going to be interesting. The Seahawks will have to have something go their way. If the Seahawks won their next two games and the Rams lose their next two, the Seahawks would end up winning the division. I do not expect, however, the Rams to lose to the Jets. However, I would appreciate it. But I'm going to go with the Rams because the Rams have just been looking better, and I just do not trust Aaron Rodgers. However, I would like a win just for Seattle's sake. Well, I'm going to go with the Rams to get the win over the Jets. So, Aaron Rodgers, please help us. And then you got an NFC East showdown. You got the Philadelphia Eagles going on the road to Washington to take on the Commanders. The Eagles beating up on the black and gold winners in the Pittsburgh Steelers, beating them down, and Russell Wilson, which thank you, by the way. But the Eagles, they have a shot to clinch the division as they are facing the Washington Commanders. The Commanders, even though they beat the Saints, it was a little bit of a close call because if they didn't convert that 2 point conversion, if they converted that 2 point conversion, it would be a whole different story. But the Commanders, even though they won, I still have some concerns about their team. I am going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles here. I do think the Commanders are a good team, but I just don't see them beating a team like Philly. They were able to beat up on the Giants, But when they faced Philly, they could not get anything going. So I'm going to go with the Eagles to get the win over Washington. And then you've got a possibly intriguing game, which depends on what team shows up. You got the Minnesota Vikings going on the road to Seattle to take on the Seattle mother loving Seahawks. The Vikings getting a win against the Chicago Bears, beating them down 30-12. But the Vikings, they're right now neck and neck with the Detroit Lions. So the Lions are probably hoping for a Seattle Seahawks win. They're going to be taking on the Seahawks, which I don't know what to think of this team right now, okay? I'm a Seahawks fan as well, as you can clearly tell. But I don't know what team's going to show up. I don't know if it's going to be the team that we see against the 49ers and Cardinals, where they absolutely look, their defense looks good and their offense can be consistent, or if it's going to be the team that we saw last week in the Green Bay Packers game. I just don't know, okay? But the Seahawks, they have to have a few things go their way. If they lose this week, they would need to win out and then have the Rams drop one. But, or at least beat the Rams in the season finale. Even if they lose, their playoff hopes are not dead entirely. Because the Bears, they're a very beatable team, yeah, but they are going to be having guys play for their playoff, for their spot on the team. So I'm not going to underestimate it too much. But then the Rams. If this goes entirely the way I'm expecting it to, the Seahawks would have a win-and-in situation against the Rams in Week 18. So this is very much of do. This is pretty much it. 3 games remaining. This is when the Seahawks need to show up. But Seattle did get some good news as Geno Smith did get is supposed to return. So I just don't know what team is going to show up. I don't know if it's going to be the team that we saw against Arizona that can stop the run and beat them down, or if it's going to be the team that we saw last week in the Green Bay Packers game that couldn't stop the run. Going against Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and also along with Aaron Jones, that is going to be a tall task. And because of the way Seattle looked against Green Bay, I haven't done this for a while, but I'm going to do it again. I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings. I've done this a few times where I've gone against my team because I just don't see a way that we're going to win. Because the Vikings, they've been looking freaking dominant, but however, Lion fans would be happy if we got a win. I need to personally see it first in order for me to actually believe. And I saw it for 4 weeks, but then they broke my heart. But I'm going to go with the Vikings to get the win over the Seahawks, but I'm hoping that I'm wrong. And then you've got another tank bowl. And man, this one's going to be really ugly. It's going to be kind of ugly. You got the Jacksonville Jaguars going on the road to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. The Jaguars, Mac Jones and the Jags losing last week to the Jets, but the Jets kind of helped out the Jags as they're currently trying to tank still. They're going to be taking on the Raiders that also are continuing to tank as they lost to the Atlanta Falcons and currently hold the number 1 pick right now. So I I mean, I don't know, honestly. This is by far a very tricky game to predict. I do think the Raiders are going to try and continue their tank. So I'm going to go with the Jaguars, but I'm not entirely too confident in that pick. But I'm going to go with the Jaguars to get the win over the Raiders. And Raiders, let's hope Cam Ward can save your team because if he can't, no one can. And then, you got an ugly game coming, especially for San Francisco. You got the 49ers going on the road to Miami to take on the Dolphins. 49ers can't even post a single touchdown.
I can't wait that long.
I mean, what was that? What in the Sam Hill was that? Huh? Somebody explain that to me. Because how do you go out in a game with the lights shining on you and you don't even post up a single touchdown? Huh? I thought Brock Purdy was supposed to be Mr. Irrelevant. More like Mr. Irrelevant to me, as he was the last pick of the NFL draft. And Kyle Shanahan, this man has been so frustrating. I know they've been dealing with injuries, and also Devondre Campbell did walk out of on him in the middle of a game. But still, you have to finish it. And you're going to get fired right out of that door right at the end of the season. I'm calling it right now. They're going to be taking on the Miami Dolphins that their playoff hopes are very slim. Very, very slim. They would have to have a few things go their way. They would need the Chargers to lose out and then also to win the rest of their games. But the 49ers, they're just banged up to wits' end. Devondre Campbell did get suspended 3 games for walking out on the 49ers, which that just explains on how the 49ers season has gone this far. And Kyle Shanahan's culture is clearly not working in San Francisco. So I am going to go with the Dolphins. It's on the road in Miami. The 49ers have been banged up to heck. So, and they couldn't even post a single touchdown on the Rams. And you got swept by them for the first time in a long time. I don't even know when because you dominated them so much. But you should have won that, by the way, for my team's sake. But Dolphins, I believe they're going to get the win, keep their slim playoff hopes alive. In San Francisco, I'm not picking you the remainder of the season. And then you've got a Sunday night game that can possibly be interesting. You got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going on the road to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Now, the Buccaneers posting up 40 on the Los Angeles Chargers, which was pretty much a home game because of all the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans there. But the Bucs, they've been looking good with the return of Mike Evans, so that has helped them. But they're going to be taking on the Cowboys, which they beat on Carolina, but they got beat by Cincinnati at home also. But the Cowboys have just been such a frustrating team to watch because you see them as a 12-win team for the last 3 years, and then they go out this year and just wet the bed.
Oh, there's a big surprise. That's an incredible. I think I'm going to have a heart attack and die from that surprise.
And the Cowboys have just been accustomed to this. They can't seem to win when they need to the most. And because of that, I am actually going to go with the Bucs. I do believe Tampa Bay has an advantage because Baker Mayfield is their quarterback and he is looking pretty good, especially with Mike Evans returning. I do believe that has helped. So I'm going to go with Tampa Bay to get the win over the Cowboys. And Cowboy fans, yeah, I'm just sorry. Well, not really, because you have caused me a lot of pain, though. And then on Monday night, you got a really interesting matchup, which could be really close. You got the New Orleans Saints going on the road to Lambeau Field to take on the Packers. The Saints almost surprisingly beating the Washington Commanders last week, as they almost beat them if they had converted that 2-point try. But I think Spencer Rattler is their guy for the future, as Carr has been hurt, is now out for the remainder of the year, possibly now. But Spencer Rattler, I've talked about this kid. I believe he's a diamond in the rough type of player. I believe he's a diamond in the rough. And I think the Saints might have gotten a steal, and I think they should start him next season and build around him. They're going to be taking on the Green Bay Packers that unfortunately beat my Seahawks. But the Packers, I have to give them credit. They have been looking really good. Their defense was the ultimate thing that saved them that game, getting those turnovers, and Seattle just could not put up an answer because the Packers are just that good. But the Packers, I think right now they could possibly maybe sneak in a division title. Maybe. It would depend on what happens with the Vikings that they face in a few weeks, and also along with the Detroit Lions also. But I am going to go with the Green Bay Packers. I do believe the Saints are going to try and put up a fight in this game to kind of see what Spencer Rattler can do. But I am going to go with Green Bay because it is in Lambeau Field, which is one of the hardest places to play, especially in December. So I'm going to go with the Packers to get the win over the Saints. And Saints, I'm just sorry. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Was there a team in the top 5 best and worst performances that I missed? Which team do you think should be in there and in what spot? And tell me why. Then in the top 10, to recap that list really quick, I'm going to show it up on the screen. I have the Bills 1, Eagles 2, Lions 3, Chiefs 4, Vikings 5, Packers 6, Broncos 7, Buccaneers 8, Commanders 9, and the Rams coming in at number 10. What do you guys think about that power rankings? Is there a team on there that I have missed? And if there is, let me know in the comments. But also, if you guys do, who do you guys think is going to win each of their games this week? Is it any of the teams that I had selected? But I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to do me a favor and smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, I'll see you all in the next one. Ciao for now.